"So you don't understand," the priest said, voice cracking in the courtroom. "To him, forgiveness wasn't something you receive, it was something you own." That line didn't just silence the jury, it sent a chill through every soul in the room. This wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a spiritual reckoning. The man who said it, a figure no one expected. An anonymous priest, known only as Father M, who had counseled Diddy for years in secret. A man who had kept his silence through scandals, whispers and rumors, until now. Why did he break his vow? What did he hear in those private sessions? That made him risk everything. And what was in the sealed envelope Diddy handed him, years before the world caught on, labeled only, "For when it all ends"? This is the story of the priest who shattered the illusion. Of a man who claimed to have purchased his salvation. And of a courtroom that watched as faith, fame and morality collided in one of the most chilling testimonies ever recorded. Viewer discretion is advised. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It is courtroom testimony, and it will change how you see power forever. The courtroom had seen twists before, explosive footage, anonymous tips, and hushed testimonies that sent ripples through the media. But nothing compared to what happened when the prosecution rose and said just one line, "We call our next witness." Father M, a ripple of confusion spread, no last name, no prior notice. Even the judge blinked in surprise, eyebrows raised. Then, the courtroom doors opened. A man in a plain black cassock stepped inside. Silver hair. Calm, unreadable expression. Around his neck, a weathered crucifix that looked older than the courthouse itself. The murmurs began immediately. Reporters leaned, and jurors exchanged looks, one even mouthed, "Is that a priest?" At the defense table, Diddy shifted, the first visible crack in his composure that day. He leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something. Whatever the answer was, it made his jaw clench. His eyes locked onto the man now walking down the center aisle step by deliberate step, like he had all the time in the world. The bailiff said only, "Please rise." And the room did, not just out of protocol, but out of something deeper. Respect, curiosity, dread. The priest took the stand with quiet authority. He didn't look at the cameras, he didn't look at Diddy, he only looked at the judge. The prosecution spoke. "This witness has been cleared through emergency review. He once served as the defendant's spiritual advisor. His testimony concerns the defendant's state of mind during private, non-sacramental consultations. He is here voluntarily." The defense team jumped up. "Objection! This violates spiritual confidentiality. This is an assault on faith." The judge raised a hand, calm but firm. The prosecution continued. "Your Honor, this is not sacramental confession. These were private discussions held outside church grounds without any binding religious seal. Father M is here of his own volition, prepared to speak." The judge looked at the priest again. He gave a small, silent nod. "Proceed," she said, and the courtroom leaned in. The priest introduced himself without a full name. "Call me Father M. That's all that matters." He explained he had spent over 2 decades working in spiritual outreach, especially for high-profile figures struggling with guilt, trauma, and the moral contradictions that come with power. "I don't offer forgiveness," he said. "That's not mine to give. I offer reflection. I ask questions. I listen." He met Diddy in 2012, referred by another celebrity whom he refused to name. At first, the meetings were civil, superficial, discussions about balance, image, public perception. He said he wanted to find peace, Father M said. But over time, I realized he didn't want peace. He wanted reassurance, that he was already right. The room grew still. I was brought in to help a man who seemed spiritually lost, but I soon realized he didn't believe he was lost at all. He believed he was above redemption, that he had already purchased it. The judge adjusted her glasses. One juror stared with mouth slightly open. Diddy sat frozen, hands folded, so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't ask for prayers, the priest continued. He asked for confirmation. He wanted me to tell him that the money he gave, to churches, to charities, was enough, that writing checks was the same as repentance. It was the beginning of a testimony no one in that courtroom, or the country, would ever forget. He wasn't invited to a chapel, not even a quiet room for prayer. The first time Father M visited Diddy's home, he was escorted through layers of security, black SUVs, armed guards, biometric gates, until he arrived at what looked more like a nightclub than a sanctuary. The priest remembered that moment vividly. "I expected a place of silence," he said. "Instead, I walked into incense fog and velvet curtains, Gregorian chants playing from a Bluetooth speaker. It felt like someone Googled holy atmosphere and built a set." At the center of this surreal space were two leather chairs facing each other, and on the wall, a third empty chair, always empty. He said it was for the spirit, the priest explained, but it felt more like a performance, a theater of repentance. Diddy greeted him not with reverence but swagger, called him Padre of the Stars, like he was just another A-list accessory. "It was clear from the first handshake," Father M said. "He wasn't seeking God, he was branding him." The sessions began, and they got darker fast. This wasn't confession, Father M testified. It was boasting. He spoke with pride about getting away with things, about manipulating morality. One line stunned the courtroom. He told me, "People talk about demons like they're metaphors. I invited mine in and made them work for me." The jury sat stiff. The prosecution paused. Let the words hang. The priest said he tried to redirect, to guide the conversation toward healing, redemption, change. But Diddy was dismissive. "Why confess," he once asked, "if I've already been cleansed?" That's when Father M realized something chilling. Diddy wasn't misunderstanding religion. He was re-engineering it. He didn't want forgiveness, the priest said. He wanted immunity. He believed if he gave enough, sponsored enough, smiled enough, that was absolution. The most disturbing moment came in their third session. Diddy had been agitated, pacing. He spoke about a girl, the priest said, pausing, someone who had threatened to speak out. He said, "She thinks anyone will believe her over me. I feed entire cities." Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Besides, I already paid for my sins. You people cashed the check." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Even the stenographer hesitated. The priest continued. "That was the moment I knew he didn't just feel untouchable by law. He believed he was untouchable by heaven." According to Father M, every meeting afterward only confirmed this mindset. Diddy had built a spiritual economy where sins were transactions and donations were receipts. He believed he could outspend judgment. He created a system, the priest explained, where morality was measured in invoices, where repentance had a receipt number. In one session, the priest tried harder. He reminded Diddy that grace was given, not bought. Diddy laughed. He said, "If grace is given, I gave first. I've paid forward 100 blessings. That puts me ahead." That line, Father M said, echoed in his dreams for months, because in that moment, he understood. This wasn't a man lost in sin. This was a man who had weaponized spirituality and believed he had gamed the system completely. The courtroom was already reeling from what had been said, but Father M was just getting started. "What disturbed me most," he continued, "wasn't just what he did. It was how he framed it. He didn't see good and evil. He saw transactions." According to the priest, Diddy lived by a system he called karma accounting, a kind of spiritual ledger where each misdeed had a price tag and every dark impulse could be cancelled out by a public good deed. He told me, "I gave $1 million to Harlem schools last year. That clears 3 sins at least." Gasps again. But the priest wasn't done. He would show me checks, large ones, and say, "This'll keep the demons quiet another year." The courtroom sat frozen. A reporter scribbled the phrase, "demons quiet," and underlined it 3 times. Father M, this wasn't just delusion, it was design. Every donation, every photo op, every headline was currency. And Diddy wasn't donating to be better. He was investing in protection. He believed in what he called image insurance, the priest said. Good deeds were his deductible. At one point, Diddy even asked if overseas donations had higher spiritual return. He said, "If I send $1 million to orphanages in Haiti, does that count more than giving to a local food bank?" I asked what he meant. He smirked and said, "Let's just say some people didn't enjoy the party as much as I hoped." A wave of discomfort spread through the courtroom. One juror lowered their gaze. Another crossed themselves. "He wasn't looking for redemption," Father M repeated. He was trying to buy immunity and negotiate the terms. According to testimony, Diddy kept a spreadsheet, a spreadsheet of philanthropic giving, which he cross-referenced with scandals and potential liabilities. One column said good press, another said buffer, a third silencer. Every cell in the sheet, Father M said, represented not generosity, but strategy. He didn't believe in repentance, the priest continued. He believed in receipts, in proof, in evidence of goodness to counterbalance the dark. In one of their last sessions, Father M confronted him directly. No amount of money erases intentional harm, he told Diddy. The response? I've done more for this world than any choir boy. I made people rich, I built lives. Don't lecture me from a book you didn't even write. The silence that followed was louder than shouting, but the priest didn't stop. He described another conversation, one that haunted him. Diddy had said, "If people believe I'm a saint, then it doesn't matter what I've done. Belief is power. Truth is paperwork." That line would be quoted by pundits, podcast hosts, and theologians for weeks. He didn't see God as someone to answer to, the priest said. He saw him as a brand to co-opt, a narrative to control. In that moment, the courtroom began to realize this wasn't about isolated acts. It was about an entire worldview, a system built not on faith but on leverage. There's a reason the room fell silent, not just still, silent. Because when Father M recounted what Diddy said to him in 2015, the words felt like a prelude, a haunting prediction of everything that was now unfolding. "Even if they catch me, even if they come for me tomorrow," Diddy had said, pacing the room and spinning a gold chain between his fingers, "I'm clean." Father M had asked what he meant. Diddy stopped, turned to face him and smiled. "I own my salvation." 4 words, spoken not with remorse, but pride. And when the priest repeated them under oath, the jury didn't flinch. They froze. "I own my salvation." It wasn't metaphorical, it wasn't spiritual. According to Father M, Diddy meant it literally. That his money, his influence, his carefully calculated giving had guaranteed him a place beyond consequence. He believed he had prepaid for forgiveness, the priest testified. That the act of sinning was no longer dangerous because the bill had already been settled. The prosecution let the quote sink in. Then came the bombshell, the envelope. Father M revealed that in late 2018, during a particularly tense meeting, Diddy had handed him a sealed envelope and said, "Just in case they try to drag me, open this when it's over. You'll see, I already won." The priest never opened it, not then. But when the current trial began, he turned it over to authorities. Until now, the contents had been sealed, but that day in court, he was permitted to read the cover letter aloud. It was dated December 24, 2018, written in Diddy's distinct cursive. "To whoever's reading this after the fall, just know I was 10 moves ahead. This is the playbook. You only catch me if I let you. But by the time this opens, I've already been forgiven. That's what matters. The rest? Just noise." A collective inhale swept the courtroom. Reporters tapped frantically. Jurors sat stone-faced. One sketch artist simply stopped drawing. The letter continued. It outlined a crisis management plan. In Diddy's own words, how to cry during interviews, which pastors would vouch for him, what charities to highlight in the aftermath, even a list of suitable phrases to humanize his image. Lines like, "My mistakes don't define me. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. God's not done with me yet." They were rehearsed, Father M said. Even repentance was scripted. He didn't just plan his defense, he planned his resurrection. And then, the most disturbing detail, yet a section labeled Ark Strategy. Diddy had written, "If this gets out, I've already built the ark. Let the flood come. I've chosen who's on board." Whispers echoed through the gallery. What did that mean? A private island? A metaphor? A threat? No one knew, but the implication was terrifying. Diddy hadn't just anticipated a fall from grace. He had engineered it into a comeback. He wasn't scared of being exposed, Father M said. He was rehearsing for it. And when asked if he believed Diddy ever felt true guilt, the priest answered without hesitation. "No," he said. He believed in optics, not forgiveness. The letter even named specific religious figures who could be relied upon in a crisis, complete with suggested talking points. Some were quoted as loyal to the brand. Others were circled with instructions like invite to Easter service or host dinner, Buar's influencers. There was also a disturbing line referencing children's charities, high empathy yield. He didn't view these causes as missions, Father M said. He viewed them as currency, leverage, moves in a game of perception. The prosecution asked if there was any evidence of remorse, anything in all their years of conversation that hinted Diddy wanted to change. No, the priest said again. He didn't want to be redeemed. He wanted to be admired. As the courtroom reeled from the letter's contents, Diddy sat silent, no longer confident, no longer calculating. Just still. This wasn't testimony anymore, it was a revelation. The courtroom felt changed, not just shaken but altered. Father M had delivered what felt like a spiritual autopsy, yet somehow the most haunting part was still to come. This wasn't just about crimes, he said softly. This was about belief, about a man who rewrote morality to suit his power and made others worship it. He paused to steady his voice. There was one final meeting, he said. 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. Churches were closed, public appearances stopped. For the first time in decades, Diddy was alone. No cameras, no crowds, no press handlers. He called the priest late one evening and asked him to break quarantine. I was hesitant, Father M recalled, but I thought maybe this was it. Maybe solitude had pierced the armor. When he arrived, he found a dimly lit room filled with candles. No music, no laughter, just silence. I thought it was a vigil, he said, but it was a celebration. Diddy had just signed a new deal, something massive, and wanted to mark the occasion with what he called spiritual closure. He poured drinks, I declined. He raised his glass and said, "To sins paid in full." The priest broke down on the stand. I begged him that night. I told him redemption wasn't a bank account, that there was still time to make things right. Diddy looked him in the eyes and said, "You were never meant to save me. You were meant to bless me." Those were the last words they exchanged. Father M sat back, visibly shaken. He had spent years hoping there was still something sacred behind the image, but that night confirmed it. Diddy didn't want salvation. He wanted immunity and control. 3. Courtroom absorbed his words like a final breath. Some jurors stared blankly at the floor. One reporter whispered, "This isn't just a trial, it's an exorcism." Then came the final blow. While the trial was still underway, the envelope Diddy had given the priest, the same one that was partially read in court, was leaked in full to an encrypted forum used by investigative journalists. Within hours, it went viral. What the world saw wasn't just strategy. It was a blueprint, pages upon pages of what Diddy called the ARC files, pre-crisis media plans, lists of church partners for redemptive optics, a table of names, producers, pastors, politicians, each with coded reminders. Took the jet, photos from Bahamas trip, donation funneled through daughters.org. One section simply said, leverage, and under it a final line. If this gets out, I've already built the ark. Let the flood come. I've chosen who's on board. Social media exploded. Diddy ark. Let the flood come. I own my salvation. Even late-night talk shows dropped punchlines and ran the story cold. This wasn't just scandal. It was doctrine. When shown the full document during redirect, Father M closed his eyes and said quietly, "He never came to confess. He came to rehearse." The judge called a recess. The courtroom emptied slowly, the weight of everything too heavy for words, but before stepping down, Father M turned to the jury one last time. "I failed," he said. "I thought I could offer grace, but all I gave him was silence. I speak now because he turned God into a marketing strategy, and someone has to say that out loud." The room held its breath. He added, "He didn't come to faith. He came to build a fortress out of it." Outside, headlines screamed, cameras flashed. But inside, something far quieter remained. A decision. The priest had ended his testimony not with accusations, but with one chilling truth. This wasn't about forgiveness, it was about control. And now it's your turn to decide what that story becomes.